Hi, I'm JT Mooring coming to you from Encinitas, California. Today I've got a song and a story to share with you with their genesis in Texas. I like to tell people I'm from Texas, even though I only lived there for a few years. But while I was there, I learned to walk and talk, and I've been practicing those skills pretty much every day since then, so I think that ought to be worth some sort of bragging rights. The reason I lived in Texas was because my dad was born and raised in Texas, and the reason I only lasted a few years was because he married a Yankee, and that was about all of Texas that she could handle at that time. So we moved up north, but every summer we would come back for 3 weeks to visit the relatives in Texas, and our first stop was always Grandma Roxy's house. Now, Grandma Roxy was old, or at least she seemed old to me. In fact, I was convinced when I was little that she had something to do with the American Revolutionary War. Turns out she didn't, but I thought she did. Now, Grandma Roxy and the other relatives had some concern about my upbringing up north, and they felt that perhaps I wasn't learning all the life lessons that I would have learned had I lived in Texas. And so they took it upon themselves to try and teach me the things that a good young man should know. I learned how to ride a horse in Texas. I learned how to gut a catfish in Texas. I learned how to spit watermelon seeds. And I learned to make sugar and butter sandwiches on Wonder Bread. Got some good stuff there. We didn't spend all our time at Roxy's house. We would drive all around Texas to visit the various relatives. And my strongest memories are when we would go up to the ranch and visit Aunt Catherine and Uncle Glenn up in the Panhandle. And my education continued there. I learned how to shoot a rifle. I learned things to do with firecrackers that have never been sanctioned by any safety organization anywhere. And I learned about the electric fence the hard way, but we'll save that story for another time. Uncle Glenn was a rancher. He was not your ride around on a horse kind of rancher. He was more the drive around in a pickup truck kind of rancher. But he had the boots and the belt buckle and the big hat. And he was a big man, and he had a big laugh that came all the way from inside of him. And he was not afraid to use it. And he used it a lot with us kids. He seemed to love to be around the kids. And he seemed to have a special affinity for me, like I was some weird halfling that was bound to do something amusing if you would just keep your eye on him, and if not amusing, at least unexpected, like maybe grab a hold of an electric fence. Well, we made that journey down to Texas for years and years, but time rolled on as it does. I grew up, I became an adult, believe it or not, moved to California, I found my forever girl, and we started raising kids. And by the time I got to take my kids out to Texas to visit the relatives, well, my cousins were adults. They had kids. Grandma Roxy was gone. The aunts and uncles had become old people. And I remember being in a room full of all those people, the kids running around, laughing, playing, the adults standing around eating and talking. And over there was Uncle Glenn. He traded in his boots for gym shoes. He'd had hip surgery. He was sitting on a walker, leaning on a cane, but he was in his element with all these kids around. He was just laughing and grinning. And then I look over here and I see my son also with his eye on Uncle Glenn, like he's trying to figure out who is this guy with the big bald head and the big loud laugh and can't hardly move around. And I realized we were seeing two completely different people. I was seeing Uncle Glenn the rancher just a few more years down the road, a little bit further down that dusty trail. And that stuck with me. And I gathered my memories of Uncle Glenn and of Texas, and I rolled them into a song to try and remind my kids and myself that when you're looking at one of these older people, try and look past those wrinkles, take a second look and try and see them in the context of their big life rather than just seeing the little snapshot of who they are today. So I called this song Good Old Boy because that's what Glenn would call all his friends. He would say things like, "Oh, I was down at the feed store talking to that good old boy." So I want to share this song with you, but while I'm getting my guitar, let me show you a few family pictures to put you in the mood. I'll be right back. Here's a family photo taken not long before I was born. You see Uncle Glenn on the right, Uncle Marvin right in the middle, my dad off on the left. I'm sure you can pick out Grandma Roxy sitting there in back. And here's Uncle Glenn on his ranch with miles and miles of Texas in the background. And between Glenn and the ranch are fence posts holding that infamous electric fence. And you can't see what Glenn is doing, but I know what he's doing. He's putting salt on his watermelon. That's a Texas thing that they were never able to quite get me to buy into. And here's Glenn with a couple of those little children that he loved so much. And here's Glenn with one of those good old boys that he also loved so much. Well, that's the end of the pictures. Let's get on to that song that I promised you. Look at that man whose skin don't fit. You tell him your name, he'll soon forget. He don't get around real well. His old hip been giving him hell. But that old man was a child once too. He played ball just like you do. He got a little scared on the first day of school. That good old boy was alive like you. He talks about people you don't know and things that happened long ago. He ran cattle, sold Bibles door to door. He got shot at in the war. That old man was a child once too. He played in the park and swam in the pool. He watched scary movies and he went to the zoo. That good old boy was alive like you. Listen to him laughing loud and long. He loves a good story, he loves a good song. He loves to give the children a hug and a kiss, but he scared the baby out of her wits. That old man was a child once too. He played ball just like you do. Got a little scared on the first day of school. That good old boy was alive like you. So look at that man. Won't you look at that man? Oh, look at the man whose skin don't fit. He's a good old boy now. Don't forget. That old man was a child once too. He played in the park and swam in the pool. He watched scary movies and he went to the zoo. That good old boy was alive like you. So here we are today. The years have rolled on again, as they do. At this point, we've lost all my uncles and aunts. My cousins and I are now the old generation. And I assure you, this is not through any choice on our part. My kids are grown. My daughter is sending me ultrasound pictures of my first two grandchildren, due in June, twins. And I hope that I or somebody can teach them, when they take a look at that good old boy or good old girl, they can see past the wrinkles, take that second look, and try and see the person that they are, not the person they've become. And I also hope that it's made very clear to them that I was never in the Revolutionary War.